All right, today we're going to talk about percents. First of all, what does percent mean? Well, per means of, and cent means 100, so percent actually means out of 100. So if we're talking about a certain percent, we're really talking about a certain amount out of 100. So if we had 2%, that would mean 2 out of 100. You can take a percent and turn it into a fraction really easily by putting it over 100. Now, if we want to figure out what this is as a decimal, we can divide, and at this point, we are allowed to use calculators. You can't use a graphing calculator, but you can use a scientific calculator. Now, do the division, 2 divided by 100, and you get 0.02. So 2% as a decimal is 0.02. We're going to be working with percents as decimals a lot moving forward. It's going to be very useful for us to represent percents as decimals when we're doing problems involving money or involving solutions and things like that. So let's get a little bit more practice and let's look at some other percents. So we could also talk about, for example, 37%. Now 37% is 37 out of 100. And if we do that division with a calculator, we get 0.37. All right. Let's talk about another one. Let's look at 500%. That's 500 out of 100. And we shouldn't need a calculator to evaluate that. 500 divided by 100 is 5. In general, if we're dealing with a percent that's more than 100%, we're going to end up with an answer that's bigger than 1. If we're looking at a percent that's smaller than 100%, we're going to have a number that's less than 1. All right. One more. Let's look at 0.1%, because we can even have decimal amounts of percents. That would be 0.1 out of 100. And if you do that division, you get 0.001. All right. So we've looked at a few percents. We've seen how to convert them to fractions. And then we can use a calculator to get the decimal answer. But we want a shortcut. We want a faster way to convert from a percent to a decimal or from a decimal to a percent. And what I want you to do is look at these percents and look at these decimals. Now, the percents and the decimals actually look very similar to each other. They use the same digits. We've got a 2 and a 2. We've got 3737. We've got a 5 and a 5. We've got a 1 and a 1. The only difference is where the decimal point goes, which then involves some extra zeros as placeholders. But really, these numbers look very similar. It's just what's happening is the decimal point is moving. And so I want to think about how the decimal point moves. And if we look at the decimal point in this percent between the 0 and the 1, and we look at how we write this as a decimal, well, the decimal point started off between the 0 and the 1, and it moved to the left 2 places. And this is a general rule. And I've written the rule out here, actually in both directions. To go from a percent to a decimal, we need to move the decimal point 2 places to the left, which we saw here. We moved it 2 places to the left. And then if we want to go in the other direction from a decimal to a percent, we just do the opposite. We move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So we're always moving the decimal 2 places, and it's either to the left or to the right, depending on whether we're converting from a percent to a decimal or a decimal to a percent. And there's a very easy way to remember which way we move the decimal point. If we write out the alphabet, A, B, C, D for decimal, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P for percent, Q, R, S, If you write out the letters of the alphabet and you look at the letter D and the letter P, If we want to go from a decimal to a percent, to go from the letter D to P, we move to the right. And to change from a decimal to a percent, we're also moving it to the right. If we want to go from a percent to a decimal, we need to move to the left to get from the letter P to D. And if we go from a percent to a decimal, we need to move the decimal place point to the left. So this is a little trick to help you remember which way to move the decimal point. We're going to do a few examples together, and then if you want, you can look at even more examples in the linked videos below. So let's just say convert between percents and decimals. These are our instructions, and we're going to start off with 32%. Now this starts off as a percent because it has a percent sign, and we need to convert it to a decimal. So to go from a percent to a decimal, we need to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Now the decimal point isn't actually written, but when we've got a whole number, the decimal point is automatically to the right of it, because the rightmost digit is the ones place, and the decimal point goes after that. So if we want to move this 2 places to the left, the decimal point needs to end up right before the 3. So we're going to have point before the 3 and the 2. And as a general rule of thumb, if you've got a decimal number that starts with a decimal point, you should put a 0 out front as a placeholder. It's just standard. That's what we'll be doing every time. So this case, 32% is equal to 0.32 as a decimal. Let's do some more. Let's look at 0.5. Now this is not a percent. There's no percent sign. So this is a decimal. And we need to convert from a decimal to a percent. Now to convert from a decimal to a percent, we need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So in this case, it's going to need to go 2 places to the right. To accomplish this, we're going to need to put in an extra 0, right? Right now, it starts between the 0 and the 5. Moving it 2 places to the right leaves it right there. So we're going to have 0.50 point. And then this is a percent now, so we've got the percent there. And we can write this a little bit more neatly. We don't need the 0 at front, and we don't actually need the decimal point when we've got a whole number. So this is just 50%. All right, let's do a few more, and then that'll be that. Let's look at 0.25. Again, this is not a percent. There's no percent sign, so it's a decimal. We need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right to go from a decimal to a percent. So that's going to give us just 25, the whole number, and it's a percent now, so that's going to give us 25%. All right, let's look at one more. Let's look at 1.2%. Now, even though there's a decimal here, because this is a percent symbol, this is a percent, and we need to convert it to a pure decimal. So to go from a percent to a decimal, we need to move the decimal point to the left 2 places. To do that, we're going to need an extra 0 out front. So we've got 0, 1, 2. The decimal started between the 1 and the 2. When we move it 2 places to the left, it goes to the left of that 0. And we're going to put one more 0 out front as a placeholder to make it look nice. And so we have 1.2% is equal to 0.012. This is an important skill to have. We're going to have some word problems with percents coming up. And so we really want to make sure that we're comfortable with this so that we can deal with percents.